sorry. Put my Bible in tea.
You don't want to put your Bible in tea, so you're wiping it with your sleeve?
Yeah.
We start? I might not cut all that out, by the way.
That's okay.
So we were trying to, in another video, off camera, show you guys this snazzy new copy that I got. And then toward the end, Jesse just went on like a very typical rant, and I thought that it would make oh my god, we're really learning how to work together. So it's fine. I'm gonna go do something. I'm gonna go cross stitch. Anyway, Jesse was going on a bit of a rant. I didn't know any of what you just told me, so we cut the video, and now this is a part 2. He was talking about anyway, you go.
We were talking about the differences between the various different renditions of the Old Testament, what's known as the Old Testament. So there's several major ones. There's the Greek Septuagint, the Masoretic Hebrew Old Testament, which is what almost everybody knows. There's the Aramaic Targum versions of the Old Testament. There's other Aramaic versions, I think, and then there's like the Peshitta and the Samaritan Pentateuch, like they have their own translation of the Torah, and that's the only books that they believe are part of the Bible. But anyways, and then obviously the Dead Sea Scrolls. So there's 6 or 7 or 8 different Old Testaments out there.
Can I tangent you for a second? Because you said obviously the Dead Sea Scrolls, and I just had a friend message me the other day, and he's like, did you ever hear about these scrolls that they found in the Dead Sea? So I don't think it's obvious. Could you take like a 30-second tangent to talk about the Dead Sea Scrolls?
Absolutely. So the Dead Sea Scrolls are a series of manuscripts that they found in Qumran, in a bunch of caves in Qumran in like 1947, I think. And they found, I believe, at least parts of every book of the Old Testament, plus some other books like Jubilees. They found several copies of. They found the Book of Enoch and some other scrolls.
Do you know what they didn't find? They didn't find Esther.
No, they found every book of the Old Testament except Esther. And obviously it was a huge deal at the time because they were much, much older than the Masoretic Text that we had. Up until that point, the Masoretic Text was the oldest Hebrew copy of the Old Testament, and it was from like the 9th or 10th century AD. So finding the Dead Sea Scrolls pushed the timeline back by like 1,200 years. They were written down, they believe, roughly somewhere between like 200 BC and 100 BC. And it just, so there we have all of these different translations or copies of the Old Testament, and they're roughly similar to each other most of the time. But because the Old Testament is so great and so big and is so long, there's thousands of places where they're different, and the differences range from just one word being a little bit different, so that when you read it in English it says something mostly the same, mostly similar, but then there's other times where the difference is pretty large. Like, for example, in the King James Version, which is based on the Masoretic Text, in Isaiah 9:4, which most people probably know, it's where it says, unto us a child is born, unto us a son is given. Isaiah 9:6 in the King James says, for unto us a child is born, unto us a son is given, and the government shall be upon his shoulder, and his name shall be called Wonderful, Counselor, the Mighty God, the Everlasting Father, the Prince of Peace. Of the increase of his government and peace there shall be no end, upon the throne of David and upon his kingdom, to order it and to establish it with judgment and with justice from henceforth even forever. The zeal of the Lord of hosts will perform this. So, obviously, a lot of like mainstream Trinitarian type people will use Isaiah 9, 6, and 7 to say, like, look, see, Jesus is clearly being called the Father in Isaiah. But then, if you go to the Septuagint and read it, it says something completely different.
I can do it. Is it here?
Yeah, right there. Because a child.
Because a child was born for us, a son also given to us, whose sovereignty was upon his shoulder. And he is named Messenger of Great Counsel. For I will bring peace upon the rulers, peace and health to him. His sovereignty is great, and his peace has no boundary, upon the throne of David and his kingdom, to make it prosper and to uphold it with righteousness and with judgment from this time onward and forevermore. The zeal of the Lord Sabaoth will do these things.
So it's super different, right? It's completely not the same thing. And then in the Aramaic Targum, which is just the Aramaic version of Isaiah, it says, the prophet said to the house of David, for unto us a child is born, unto us a son is given, and he has taken the law upon himself to keep it. His name is called from before him who is wonderful in counsel, the mighty God who liveth to eternity, the Messiah whose peace shall be great upon us in his days. So it's, instead of saying that this child will be named Wonderful Counselor, the Mighty God, the Everlasting Father, it's, the Aramaic version makes it clear that his name is being named before the Wonderful Counselor, the Mighty God, the Everlasting Father, the Messiah whose peace shall be great upon us in his days. And then it says, the greatness of those who do the law shall be magnified, and to those that preserve peace there shall be no end to the throne of David and of his kingdom, to establish it and to build it in judgment and in righteousness from henceforth even forever. By the word of the Lord of hosts this shall be done. So you could see, like, there's, with the Dead Sea Scrolls, those are the four main big renditions of the Old Testament: the Septuagint, the Masoretic, the Aramaic Targum, and the Dead Sea Scrolls. And they're all slightly different most of the time, but then, like I said before, sometimes they're very, very different, and it's caused a lot of theological debates, obviously,
but they're not really debates in the end, because something just comes and crushes as the mainstream thought. There's no debating.
Yeah, I mean,
I don't like the fact that you just said the Trinity types, because that's going to freak a bunch of people out. And maybe another time we can talk about what you and I believe in terms of the relationship between the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit, because it's probably not what you're thinking.
Yeah.
But the reality is there's something that massively takes over mainstream, and if you don't believe it, then you cannot possibly be following Christ.
Yeah, unfortunately. And those people, obviously, they stick to one version of the Old Testament, and usually it's whatever version.
Okay, but I'm going to pause since we're on this tangent that I don't want to be on. Because the people I know who are really love the Trinity, they come from the Orthodox tradition, which follows the Septuagint. So I'm not sure if I...
But the Orthodox Church is just an offshoot of the Catholic Church, which is the people who invented the idea of the Trinity. So,
but we see it in the 66 book canon.
Yeah.
I mean, not the word, but...
We do see a lot of it. And there's different... People have different ideas for why that is. Like, some people think that they just outright changed the text to make it seem like the Trinity was a thing.
and not something that was just decided at a council somewhere.
Yeah, and I guess I'm not convinced of that fully, because there's so many different versions of the Old Testament, and I think that the King James version and the versions that came before that and the versions that came after it up to a certain point, they only had access to whatever manuscripts that they had access to. But today we have access to older and older manuscripts. I think when they compiled the King James, the oldest manuscripts that they had were from like the 10th century or the 9th century, so they weren't very old. But now we have manuscripts. The Aramaic Targum version is from right after Israel came back from exile in Babylon. It was from like the 500s BC, so we have much, much older source material than the King James people had, like 1,500 years older. And
because we're talking about King James, so the whole idea for doing these shows is that Jesse and I spent a lot of time in exactly these situations. We're aware the camera's there, but it's basically Jesse starts talking and then I bring him on another tangent and a rabbit hole, and it's very rare that he's not already been there 10 years ago. So I only discovered since I've known you, because everybody talks about how King James is the be-all, end-all, but the Geneva Bible is older than King James.
Mm-hmm. And so is the Wycliffe Bible. So basically, in like 1366, I think it was, somewhere around there, this guy named Wycliffe translated the Bible into Old English. And then Thomas Nelson, I think was his name. No, what was his name? Maybe it was Thomas Nelson. The guy that he translated the New Testament into, no, William Tyndale, not Thomas Nelson, I'm sorry. William Tyndale. He translated the New Testament into the King's English. He was the first person.
He was killed for it.
I think so, yeah. He was, they shut him down at least before he was able to finish the Old Testament. He had like most of it done but not published. So anyways, pretty much all of the Bibles that were in English from the time that he first did it until the King James, most of them were roughly the same. Like the King James took something like 90% of its wording from Tyndale's version, and so did the Geneva Bible and the Coverdale Bible. Like they all kind of borrowed from each other and that kind of
so then in that last little half video we made when we were flipping through the Septuagint, we talked about the 11 King James Bible and all of the books that are in the Septuagint, and then some are in that version. So we have the Old Testament Septuagint plus the Gospels, the Epistles, everything in the New Testament in the Old King James Version. And now when you pick up the King James, we only have 66 books.
Yeah. So in 1789, I think, when they came out with the King James Version, authorized version, like the authorized King James Version, the AV, they took out the Apocrypha for whatever reason. So now when you say King James Version in 2025, it's the 66 book authorized version.
So that's why I was saying a minute ago that, like, for sure when I started reading the Bible, I was also parroting this idea of like, no, the 66 books, you know, because I was like kind of traumatized with the whole Catholicism thing, and like I never actually read the Bible when I was going to Catholic school and Catholic church. And I was like remembering all of these books in the pews, and then it occurred to me, I was like, oh, those were hymn books. They weren't even Bibles that were available. They were just hymn books, and nobody ever read them. I didn't even know Jesus in those days in my Catholic school, but I still know Hail Mary like the back of my hand.
Oh, I'm sure.
But I lost my train of thought. I got super excited about that.
Talking about the 66
Yeah,
books.
so I was really like a staunch defender of 66 books, and then didn't take me too long to like hear whisperings of the Book of Enoch and Jubilees and Jasher, all of these things whispering at me. And I bought them, and I was like hiding them, and I had the Book of Enoch on my bookshelf for I don't know how many months before I had the courage to actually open it.
Yeah.
Maybe that's definitely a conversation for another day, but I just think that it's important for people who are new to studying the Bible, and also people who are not so new to studying the Bible, to not be afraid to go, or to at least take, like, at least if you don't want to go toward a book like Enoch or Jubilees, at least know that the Old King James and the Septuagint and the Catholic Bible all have these extra texts. And like, if you don't trust Jubilees, fine. I don't know. Anyway, fine if you don't trust those extra books is one thing, but like at least maybe look into the idea of looking at those books that we showed in that last video that, you know, like that Bell and the Dragon was really cool to read.
Yeah.
And like at some point they were cool with it being in the book.
Yeah.
So maybe we can make another, you said like, oh, for whatever reason they took it out. I have a feeling you know exactly why they took these things out, and maybe that's
I have a couple theories, I guess.
maybe that's a video for another day. But I'll let you decide if you have anything more that you want to say. It's been 16 minutes.
Yeah, no, I think that's it for now. So, should we just end it?
Yeah, we can just end it.
Okay. Bye.